you everybody for coming. Before we get started tonight, I'd like to ask that we observe a moment of silence for Dr. Stephen Curry, a longtime math teacher at Hollenbeck, who passed away this month. We'll just take a moment of silence to honor him. Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting into order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board would like a motion to approve the agenda for August 17th, 2023 as presented. Director Ushkar, Director Ponder. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next up, we have patron comments. During patron comments, residents of the district and staff members are invited to address the Board of Education on issues related to the school district. Speakers are called forward in the order of sign up, and each speaker has 3 minutes to make their remarks. Please remember that only one speaker is allowed at the podium at a time, and combining time or giving your time to someone else is not permitted. The board appreciates that you have taken the time to come this evening, and we value your input and perspective. I would like to remind everyone that we expect the speakers will remain civil and respectful when giving remarks. If anyone fails to comply with board policies, regulations, and rules, we reserve the right to cut them short of those 3 minutes. For your convenience, our 3-minute clock is ready. First up, we would like to welcome Sam Young.
Good evening, board, superintendent, staff. I'm glad that the majority of the school board approved policy 0299, addressing resolutions to the last meeting. I'm especially glad that the resolution committing the district to teaching the principles of critical race theory and taking on an active political voice is on its way out. The local NEA and supporters still deny that the resolution supported critical race theory. However, the resolution ends with a commitment to, quote, a culture of anti-racism district-wide, unquote. The term anti-racism in the August 2020 resolution does not simply mean being against racism. It follows Ibram X. Kendi's notion of anti-racism. In a podcast with Slate from June 2021, Kendi says that critical race theory is foundational to his work and inspired his formulated definition of anti-racism. In a follow-up question, he is asked if it is possible to be anti-racist without studying critical race theory. In his answer, he says, quote, I just can't imagine a pathway to being anti-racist that does not engage critical race theory, unquote. On the district Zoom call with critical theorist Professor LeGarrette King in 2020, current and former district staff do their own engaging with CRT and admit that such ideas are controversial and unpopular. One history teacher says that she would be better described as an anti-U.S. history teacher than a U.S. history teacher. Another group points directly back to this resolution, saying that the board provides support for administrators to say to the public that they are moving forward with tenets of CRT. The district staff meant to move forward with or without the public's approval or support. Supporters of the anti-racism resolution never defend the use of racial balancing to remove middle school challenge courses. Racial disparities in middle school challenge classes is not proof that there is systemic racism within the district. The term equity in the August 2020 resolution does not call for equal opportunity for all students to place into these challenge courses using objective standards, but seeks to impose racial quotas on the class formation. Once again, why do resolution supporters not talk about these anti-racism policies? I didn't hear anything about them last meeting when they were supporting that. The last 2 election cycles show that the resolution has caused enough damage and that it's time for it to go. Thank you.
Up next, we welcome Grace and Justice.
Hello, my name is Grayson Justice. I'm an alumni of Francis Howell School District of class of 2013. My pronouns are he and she. I want to talk about what happened on June 15th. I was denied permission to speak on the June 15th meeting because I was late, plus there was 10 minutes left on the clock. Mr. Cook, who is not here, denied my First Amendment right to speak. I was silenced. Mr. Cook came to me after the meeting to apologize and said he was only thinking about the board. And speaking about the board, 2 members were at the library board meeting on June 20th, including Ms. Puskar. Jane, you said some ignorant and bigoted things from what you said that night. And you were mentioned a few times in different newspapers and articles, which has kind of hurt the Francis Howell reputation. How dare you? Now, I have looked into the rules of public comments and none of them mention anyone who is late and already signed up cannot speak. I know you all 4 hate me for who I am and what I'm for the good of all Francis Howell. And I was thinking long and hard about this situation, and I'm giving you guys one last chance. For not violating my First Amendment rights, the right of free speech. I hope you all learned your lesson well, including you, Randy Cook. Because you know what they say, history will repeat itself. And shame on you for bringing back racism and discrimination back to Francis Howell. Shame on you all. Thank you.
Next, we welcome Amy Easterly.
Good evening. My name is Amy Easterling. You guys know that. I have been a resident of the Francis Howell School District for the last 20 years. You know that too. I have 2 children who have attended all levels of school in this district. One graduated in 2021, and I have a current senior at Francis Howell North. I'd like to speak tonight in support of our gifted program and specifically the National Association of Gifted Children Conference that's being voted on tonight. My older child, as a participant in the SAGA program here in the district in middle school and high school, benefited greatly from the support and education that he received. I am confident that he wouldn't be the successful rising college junior that he is now if it hadn't been for the amazing support he received from Teresa Marr and Karen Flood at both Sager Middle School and Francis Howell Central. The curriculum that our gifted program provided to my son filled many needs. First, it gave him the opportunity to learn at an academic level that was appropriate for him. This was done through several different methods, specific topics that are taught within the gifted class that he attended in middle school, as well as making sure he was able to take courses offered in our high school that he was ready for. That flexibility really helped us as parents to navigate through the curriculum and make sure that our son was challenged and engaged. Even more important was the social and emotional support that he received. I know some of you don't like some social and emotional support, but I'm telling you, it was needed. And he specifically received that from his teachers in the gifted program. I wanted to address this because I saw that there was a board question about this on the conference. So I want to give you my perspective as a parent. If you haven't parented or taught a gifted child, you may not know that gifted children often need support in many different ways. Being gifted just doesn't mean that you're academically advanced or smart. There's actually a known phenomenon called asynchronous development that is very common to gifted children. You can actually go to the NAGC website and look it up if you want. I have a very technical explanation, but I'm not going to waste my minutes to read it. But basically, it means that these kids, their brains are advancing at one speed, their social, their emotional is at a different speed, and they really do need support other than just advanced classes. So, as a parent of a gifted child, I can definitely say that's a thing. And I can also say with confidence that our gifted teachers right here in FHSD were invaluable in helping our son cope with his challenges. Because they are educated specifically to work with gifted children, I'm sure in part by attending national conferences, our gifted teachers are able to help these kids get along with peers and cope with their emotions. And that in turn helps them be successful students. I watched a kid that really struggled in middle school turn into a confident young man, and I know that somebody sitting in this room contributed to that. So I just ask you to put aside your political beliefs and support these kids and support these teachers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your time is up.
Up next, we welcome Herb Blow.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I had some other comments which are not really relevant now, but my thing is talking about educating all the kids. I volunteer in various capacities, and one thing that I do is that I take a team at the Y that nobody wants, nobody will coach. And I've coached 3rd and 4th grade, 5th and 6th grade, and 7th and 8th. This last year, I did 7th and 8th grades, and I was blessed, myself and another coach, with just an incredible team, great attitude, everything else. But there are 2 kids that are on that team that I'm really concerned about as they go into high school. One is almost nonverbal, but the kid is a great kid. I think he's going to Howell. The other one is in middle school at, again, I think it's Francis Howell Middle School. And both of those need attention. And, you know, that's what we need to strive to do. I think my son was gifted also, and at least one of them was. The other one took after me. Anyway, that was a great experience for him. But the ones I'm worried about are the ones on the other end of the spectrum. The teachers have so much to do. They have to teach to the middle, unfortunately, in my opinion. If I'm wrong, I apologize. The kids that are on the fringe, on the lower end, we've just got to figure out some way to address their needs, to get them special help if they need it in some form or fashion. My younger son, the one that took after me, I was on the board in 86 to 89, I think those are the dates, I'm not sure. While I was on the board, and unbeknownst to me, he was abused in high school at Francis House School. Lord knows at that time I probably wouldn't have been as kind that I would be now about that, but we can't allow bullying or any type of prejudice against any student, teacher, administrator, period. You know, we just really have to look out after everybody. This is a great school district. I have a gifted child, like I said.
Thank you. Your time is up.
I beg your pardon. Sorry. Thank you.
Up next, we welcome Caroline Owens.
Good evening. My name is Carol Lee Owens. I am the daughter of 2 educators, the mother and mother-in-law of 3 educators, and I am a retired educator. My family and I believe in the democratic ideals of the public schools, where all are welcome and all are seen and heard. I'm assuming we have all seen the incredible amount of press coverage regarding the Francis Howell School District. Unfortunately, it has not been positive, and it has put this district in a bad light. The act of sunsetting the resolution against racism and discrimination has brought embarrassment to this district on a national level. I did hear it on the national news. One of the comments from the majority that appeared in the newspaper was, "The school board doesn't need to be in the business of dividing the community." These words do not ring true. The action taken by the majority was not only divisive, but offensive to those of us who believe in the promise of equality in our schools. Another disturbing statement that appeared in the paper was carrying out commitments made by prior school boards has many challenges. Are you saying this school board and this district cannot live up to carrying out a resolution against racism and discrimination? No one on this board or any other board should serve if they are not committed to fighting these evils. Standing for the basic principles is a sacred duty for everyone involved in serving students in America. Public schools are under constant attack in this country, but we do not expect the attacks to come from within. You were elected to provide a gateway to opportunity for our students. You were not elected to force your political ideologies on this district. We need to send a positive and uplifting message to the families of Francis Howell. The walls of our buildings must proclaim that racism and discrimination will never be tolerated in the schools of Francis Howell. Words do matter, and the words of the resolution should be respected and upheld. Please begin working on the issues that impact our students and teachers every day. School safety, mental health, and teacher retention should be at the top of your list instead of your current focus on the culture wars of today. Thank you.
Up next, we welcome Patrick Lamb.
Good evening, Board of Education, Administration, and community members. I am here this evening to address the introduction of a policy to sunset district resolutions. As many of you know, I proudly served 6 years on the Board of Education and was part of the team that introduced and signed all of 3 resolutions in question. Hopefully, I can help clarify the board's vote on each document. Resolution to introduce charter schools to our state's largely populated areas. The board was not against the concept of charter schools. Our concern were of the proposed legislation at the state level. Charter schools in the state do not have to be accountable to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. If a public school opens in the state, the district is accountable for attendance, hiring highly qualified teachers, test scores, graduation rate, ACT performance, special education services, and gifted services on day 1. Basically, public schools gladly accept all children with open arms. Charter schools can be selective in their enrollment and are not held accountable for student performance until their 6th year of operation. Resolution to eliminate personal property taxes. The board was concerned with the elimination of taxes that benefit the schools, libraries, police departments, fire departments, emergency services, and local governments. There was not any proposed way as to how we would replace those necessary funds to maintain the excellent level of services in our community. And the resolution to accept and respect all children, teachers, staff, parents, and community members in our learning community. Sadly, we have had Black, Brown, Asian, Indian, and Middle Eastern children called derogatory names, accused of causing the spread of COVID, told to go back where they came from, told they had no right to be here, and accused of ruining the American dream. The board felt it was necessary to develop a statement that was inclusive of everyone in our community. All 3 of these topics continue to be relevant today. They were not just a moment in time, as it has been implied. Now, more than ever, our community needs the support and the role of our public schools as we strive to be a part of a strong community. My final thoughts are to request that you consider the needs of our children in our public school. Please set aside your personal or political thoughts and remember your oath to promote and provide our students with the very best education in an accepting and welcoming environment. I do appreciate your time and efforts.
Up next, we welcome Natalie Berry.
Greetings to the Francis Howell School Board members and everyone who is joining in to listen today. My name is Natalie Berry and I have an amazing child in the district this year. The anti-racism resolution created in 2020 following George Floyd's murder was masterfully written. However, I wasn't shocked to learn that it was shot down this year in 2023, given the current political climate. I want to share a short story with you. One day I came home from work, my child, aged 3 and a half, asked, "Mommy, if you're dark brown and Daddy is white, am I yellow?" My heart just sank. I responded, "No, sweet pea, we are not crayons. We are all a part of the human race. You took the best parts of me and your father. Sweet pea, there is no such thing as black, white, or yellow races. Some people simply have more pigmentation or melanin in their skin than others. But we are all made in the image of God. My child views race challenges in this country as completely stupid. My child isn't colorblind and can see the differences in skin colors, but intuitively he understands that there isn't a whole lot of difference between people in general. There are good and evil ones, there are nice and mean ones, intelligent and unintelligent people in this world, and they come in all skin tones. We are 55 years removed from the Civil Rights Movement, and we are still dealing with race issues. Racism is alive and well in America. And it won't even change in my lifetime. I truly believe that. I honestly care more about the bullet than I care about the foul-mouthed words coming from a child. My child is raised to handle it just like I was. If an adult is out of line, my child will let me know, and we adults will deal with it accordingly. With all due respect, in this community, we have gun shows almost every weekend. Crime, substance abuse, and mental health issues are on the rise. I'm more concerned about the security of our children getting to and from school. How safe will they be at school when they arrive, and how responsive will the police department be if, God forbid, we have an active shooter? I want to know if our police department will respond to an active shooter as ferociously as the police responded to protesters in Ferguson, Missouri following Mike Brown's murder in 2014. Because if it's not, I want you to know that I won't be one of those mothers standing in front of the camera singing some old Negro spiritual talking about I forgive. Not when it comes to my baby. Parents, this is for you. It starts with us at home. We must all check our own ignorance and biases so that we send our children out into the world to be mindful and considerate of others. We must secure our guns so that children don't enter the schools with them. We must be vigilant in our communities as the children journey to and from school in the light of bus issues and child predators amongst us. And I close with this question. Can the Francis Howell community please look into opportunities to bring us together in fellowship?
Thank you. Your time is up.
On the school grounds.
Next, we welcome John Heidbreder.
Good evening. My name's John Heidbreder, and I'm a 13-year resident here in Francis Howell School District. After the last board meeting, I was able to send a letter to the board and to 5 of the staff and teachers that included a book called The Quest for Character, raising, as Martin Luther King Jr. did many years ago, that the most important thing, in my view, that we can raise in our children is good character. In that book, I've asked you all to read a opening statement about the character crisis. And I've included 4 questions subsequent to that relative to the application of that book or any better book as a starting point for character being understood and taught to each of our students here. In addition to that, I ask you to read from the Patriot book, the primer, a little short article by President Samuel Adams about being created equal. And I will address in a letter again my thoughts, but included in there I had the 2 mission statements that I found for the Howell School District. I've asked for the mission statement from the Francis Howell Education Association, and I believe that it would be beneficial that we have one unified mission statement that the board, the staff, the teachers, and the citizens could agree on to post in each school as a unifying document that our children would see. I think fundamental to that, that we are created equal, and we are created man and woman. 3 basics from all of our presidents and all state constitutions in this nation. So I think that consideration of that premise is very important, that our children have clarity from us as leaders and not confusion. I think it's one simple step that we can do, and I would certainly address this further again to everybody, staff, teachers,
Thank you.
the board.
Your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
Up next, we welcome King Gontars.
Board admin, good evening. In April 2022, and for a second time in April 2023, patrons of the Francis Howell School District resoundingly elected 5 new members. Those elected received more votes than in any other non-bond referendum election ever. We all are aware of the ideological dialectic facing our nation's schools, including here within Francis Howell. The struggle between conservative and progressive perspectives sadly rages. Issues that have been passionately brought up at every school board meeting in the last 2 years include the audit of the new Francis Howell North High School, critical race theory, curriculum content, justice versus social justice, equality for all versus equity, racism, discrimination, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, First Amendment free speech lawsuits, LGBTQ issues, transgender issues, bullying, biological boys in girls' bathrooms, biological girls in boys' bathrooms, objectionable content in school libraries, parental rights regarding children, gun rights, separation of church and state, issues with prominently displaying the American flag in our classrooms, and the list goes on. St. Charles County patrons in recent elections have chosen repeatedly to elect common sense representatives. Francis Howell families will continue to work tirelessly to elect such school board members as well. The 16,000 patrons who cast their votes, 16,000 cast their votes in the last 2 elections, as well as the Francis Howell families, appreciate and applaud this board's courage and resolve. We commend you for staying the course. You're doing an exemplary job. The emails, phone calls, and texts we received recently have soared, attesting to the overwhelming support of this community. Whether one's views are conservative or progressive, both sides have this in common: a fervent desire to do what is right and what is best for our schools, our children, and our teachers. Keep up the great work. The vast majority of our patrons and elected officials support and thank you. Nice job.
Up next, we welcome Jamie Martin.
It's quite the political list we just heard for a nonpartisan school board. Yes. Okay. Probably not the best way to start, because the way I want to start is I want to recognize that the last time I stood here, my comments were pointed. I believe my anger was justified, but I assumed ill intent, and that was not productive. So I want to apologize. As leaders of our community, we should strive to serve as public figures in unpaid roles without these assumptions, which are harmful. And I'll work to avoid them in the future. I also want to thank our board members and their spouses who are serving as parents of school-age children this month. It's a sacrifice to fulfill these duties on the board as the school year opens, while also supporting your children in preparing for their own school year. This came from Open House. Okay. Tonight, I want to talk about 3 issues. First, as you're all aware, I strongly oppose the sunsetting of the resolution against racism and discrimination. I request it be reinstated without revision. Dozens of requests were emailed to this board to preserve this specific resolution, and a clear majority of speakers came forward last month and pleaded for a different action. I'm disappointed in your lack of recognition in response to these patrons, and I hope this will not be the standard moving forward. A mobilized, outspoken community deserves this board's recognition. Furthermore, should the board consider revising the resolution, I encourage these revisions first be justified by compelling and credible reasoning to do so, and that this be done in a formal public exchange. Second, it's come to my attention that FHSD staff members have received the directive from this board not to survey students asking about their pronouns. These staff members have cited policy 1610, which restricts questions to students in several areas, including political, religious, privileged information, or sexual behavior and attractions, etc. Board, our gender pronouns do not align with any of this criteria. Gender identity is not the result of party affiliation or religious worship. It is not protected under attorney-client privilege, nor does it concern sexual attraction. However, misstating a student's pronouns is an awkward mistake, and it's challenging for student-teacher rapport. It's challenging for peer relationships when someone is misgendered. This is actually common. It's happened to me with students who identify as their gender at birth, because adolescents explore many forms of expression through dress and appearance, and they present with a host of different body types. Directing teachers to avoid these awkward missteps by denying them the chance to learn a student's pronouns up front is of no benefit to students or staff. It's silly. Finally, as you consider the request for the travel to the Gifted Conference tonight, please do not overreach. Please remember that personal and individual funds should be spent at every individual's discretion. Thank you.
FHEA?
Good evening, Board of Education, Dr. Rompus and Executive Cabinet, patrons and parents. We want to welcome our educators back to start a fantastic new year. Thank you to all of our support staff for the amazing work completed this summer. We look forward to partnering with our parents to provide our students with the safest and best learning environment. I want to also share with you FHEA's mission statement, as it's been talked about lately. We are committed to protecting, promoting, and advocating for our students, educators, and schools. We strive to ensure our schools are safe places where the dignity of students and educators is honored, allowing all to learn and grow. I also would like to take just a second to say that we look forward to working with the board and administration to retain our loyal teachers in Francis Howell. Thank you, and I hope everyone has a great school year.
Bispa?
Another summer has come and gone. This Monday, our doors will open and the kids will once again grace our halls. A lot of work has gone into prepping for this Monday. The halls and classroom glisten with all the efforts from your custodial team. The lights shine bright, and things once broken are fixed and ready due to your maintenance crew. Yesterday, I got to witness their work transforming old admin into the beautiful bus garage, and it was amazing to see. Despite being short-staffed, the work got done. Our groups buckled down and did the thing. We reduced the custodial workforce by 18 last year to get an increase. So it is extremely important to provide the insurance and benefits and working conditions that we currently have to keep the outstanding workforce we have. The work never ended for secretaries as they continued prepping for this upcoming school year. Our poor grounds crew with this weather. All summer, these teams have been grinding so that this Monday, kids of the district can come back to safe and beautiful buildings. Our other groups are back and ready to help support the children in getting a great education. Our interpreters, paras, and nurses are all ready to do their very best for our students. It was mentioned at our labor management meeting on Tuesday that we too are recruiters of the district, and what we say to potential candidates is important, and we have always done this. The last several years have been a struggle. Let's change that. Let's work together to change that. We are willing. We are a diverse group with all different types of jobs. All of them matter in the scheme of things. We're all here to support the students at Francis Howell. The schools are ready, the teachers are ready, support staff ready. Let's all have a wonderful year and keep Francis Howell one of the best workplaces.
Up next, we'll have an update of Prop S.
Good evening, Board. Well, it's been another busy month at Francis Howell North, and we continue to average about 150 tradesmen and women on a consistent basis. And so I'll go ahead and jump right into our presentation. So from this vantage point, it doesn't seem like the site has changed very much from last month, but it really actually has. And so to the north here, the new drive is completely paved. I think I noted that at our last meeting. And so it's already open and been heavily utilized here the last couple of weeks with band camp and all of the various co-curricular programs that have kicked off at North, and I think Transition Day. And so far, all is good. Here in the next week or so, we're going to really begin sequencing a lot of work on the north end of the site here. We're going to sequence the construction trailers over to the northwest end. That way we can finish developing the north parking lot. So we're going to start pouring curbs and get all the subgrade squared away, because right now the construction trailers sit on the old tennis courts. So that work will kick off. Next week also, we're to the west of the football stadium, we're going to start working on the grandstand. So they were actually starting to form up, and they'll pour that concrete pad. The piers have already been set, and bleachers will ship the first week in September, and they'll start installing those. Also want to highlight the northwest corner of the stadium itself. You see we haven't finished the curbing there. We've got some drain work to install, but as soon as that's installed, we'll mobilize with the asphalt around the track. We'll get that laid. We're trying to beat weather. That way we can get the rubber surfacing installed before winter. It needs a cure time. So again, I already mentioned the front entry, but here it is. It's open. Everything seems to be going well. We also shot a drone video that we pushed out to Henderson as well as Francis Howell North families. That way they know how to traverse and follow all the construction traffic and make sure everybody's in their right lane. This slide here has really progressed. We had progress meeting there today. So these are the outbuildings. You've got the concession stand, ticket booth, and the restroom facilities. So all of the brick veneers actually been installed. The vapor barrier here was a couple of weeks ago. So the masons have already installed all the brick veneer, and they will begin pulling off here in about another week or so. We also continue to develop the east side of the school here. We've got the retaining wall that's installed. And as you can see there below, we've also formed up for all the concrete work that's surrounding that east side. They've actually poured a majority of that. And this is the east elevation of the building. We continue to work around the building with various areas, getting all the storefront curtain wall systems installed, as well as the glazing. South elevation of the building, all the overhead doors are installed. As you see here, the mechanical room, that's a fairly sizable overhead door, just in the event down the road that we need to, re-maneuver and make some necessary repairs in there. We've got the room to be able to get equipment in and out. And then also on the right side here, you can see the overhead doors for building services and all the other shop rooms. These two spaces on this slide are the music areas. So we've got drywall. The finishers are in there right now. They're actually ahead a little bit. So they've got all the drywall hung, all the seams taped and mudded, and the painters are following right behind them. To the right of the screen is the nurse's reception area. Again, the brick veneers, they've topped out in those areas. and their framing and drywall is in progress. And so we have about another 2 weeks of the masons on site, and then they will begin pulling off. And that'll be a pretty large workforce that'll roll off. And so we'll probably go from an average of 150 to about 100 tradesmen and women once they pull off. And then again, this is gym, lobby, and concession. Brick veneer, framing, and drywall continues to progress in those areas. This is the media center. Framing, drywall, again, is in progress there. And then one little neat thing here that obviously I wasn't up here for this, but back in July of 2022, they did a student art program, project, I should say. And so you see the first graduating class there of Heckman Early Childhood Center. So with that being done back in July, you can see they've taken that artwork and incorporated it into the Library Media Center. On the second level, this is the science wing, chemistry labs. Polished concrete continues to progress in those areas. All of the casework, obviously you can see all the plumbing rough ends, they're already all stubbed up, ready to go. And casework's on site. They'll start installing those as the polished concrete flooring crew moves to other areas. Here we are with the allowances. Not too much has changed there. The escalation allowances, I should say, and then the GMP value billed to date as the most recent pay application, $123,718,154. $123,718,154. Okay, so that's my presentation. And before I get into any additional questions, just kind of want to note, obviously, we're continuing to work on some of the remaining framework for the work that still needs to take place regarding our bond projects. This evening, you guys have a motion in front of you under consent for potentially moving forward with the secure entry vestibules that still need to be completed. And Ms. Carol Embry and myself are starting to work on a framework to present to you guys at some point in time here in the very near future regarding next steps with the remaining work. So be happy to take any questions that you have. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Board, I'd like a motion to approve the consent agenda for August 17th, 2023 as presented.
So moved.
Second. Director Ling. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Board, I'd like a motion to approve the travel request for National Association for Gifted Children as requested.
So moved.
Second. Director Stiglitz, Director Ling. All those any discussion, board? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
Ayes have it. Or like a motion to approve the 2023-2024 adjustment to adult meal prices as presented.
So moved.
Pushkar, Director Ponder. Discussion, board? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Or like a motion to approve the July 2023 monthly financial report as presented.
So moved.
Stiglitz, Lang, our Director Ponder. Ms. Embry.
Thank you very much, and thank you. Oh, yes, the microphone should point to the mouth. Yes, we've established this. Okay, so thank you so much for this opportunity. I will just briefly comment the adult meal price. You read in the memo, but basically we didn't have to reduce it back down, but with the new information, we felt it was important to give you opportunity to approve that reduced fee, so thank you for that. So this evening, we have prepared for you a summary, basically, analyzing the FY23 revised budget to the actual experience that just ended June 30. We also finished our first report to the state. It's called the Annual Secretary of the Board Report. Ms. Hepler is happy to share that she has nothing to do with that report. That's delivered out of the Finance Department. And basically, that report is submitted multiple times until we are finished with the work that includes the conclusion of the financial audit for FY23. And at that point in time, you will be presented both the financial audit and the ASBR that matches that. Excuse me. So for this evening, we are providing you those actual differences with revenue and also with expenditures. We'll also cover some upcoming financial impacts and then next steps. The information that has been submitted in the ASBR as of August shows that FY23 we ended with an operating fund balance percentage estimated at 27.61. I say estimated because that could potentially change depending on whatever information might change through final expenditure reports that still need to be submitted for various programs and other adjustments. That estimate is approximately 5.44 higher than what we had estimated during the June presentation of the FY24 budget. So actual revenue received was higher than that which was budgeted for revenue, and actual expenditures were lower than the expenditure budget. So what I want to remind you of first is that the budget for FY23 was basically constructed during the period January 2022 through probably May of 2022, and then presented to you. And then there were some opportunities for budget amendments based on information that was known at the time. So with the budget that was presented in June for FY24, we relied heavily on that FY23 budget. So we know that as we go through this process of analyzing the data and digging deeply to understand where the gap exists, that we will need to bring forward for you budget amendments to the current year budget. So I'll jump in now and cover with you some of that data that has been analyzed so far. So I mentioned revenue has come in higher than our revenue budget. And so you can see listed here are the primary object categories. Overall, revenue came in nearly 5% higher than the revised budget called for, okay? The primary categories include local, county, state, federal, other revenue, which could be sale of goods, and then revenues received from other districts. So we see on that slide that we were 3.2 million higher on local revenue, 121,000 higher on county, 4.373 million higher on state. Federal was 4.148, just a slight under budget situation for other revenue. And then received from other districts was 280,000 higher than that which was budgeted. If we take a look at some of that, just a reminder that there are unpredictable revenues and there are non-recurring revenues included within all of this data. So what that means is while we may see a spike for FY23, that will not necessarily repeat in FY24 or beyond. So some of those revenues include delinquent tax collections. We don't know always how much will be paid. Those tax collections could be from prior year data, multiple years. Earnings on investments did fluctuate from historical. So while we provided a budget amendment in FY23 to increase that revenue allocation, it still came in stronger. So it's all good news, it's just different than what we anticipated. We know that financial institutions tax was atypical. Information from DESE indicates that they had a correction from a prior year, and so that showed up under the state revenue section. And then we had significant increases in the nutrition services area. Also, we've talked before about ESSER funds, where those are temporary one-time funds that have come in to our bank account. This further breaks down the local revenue and shows you that under delinquent tax, $615,370 higher than what was actually budgeted. Proposition C had a slight increase. And note that I'm representing for you here anything that's 100,000 higher than budgeted or 100,000 lower than budgeted.
Earnings on investments or temporary deposits, $418,750. Food service sales of reimbursable meals to pupils came in stronger at $579,000. Other pupil activity, $867,000, and typically with that one, we budget an offsetting expenditure to revenue. So it's possible that the expenditure side is also higher than or lower on expenditures. Community services, $343,395. Our preschool tuition actually is one that shows that it came in under budget. So digging into what is causing that or what caused that in the FY23 year. And then we have a prior period adjustment that is an anomaly, and that's $583,362. For county revenue, we have one code that produces itself on that $100,000 threshold, and that state assessed railroad and utility taxes came in stronger than was budgeted at $110,075. And for that particular revenue, we often budget what we received the year before because we don't have strong indicators on what that might look like. For state revenue, basic formula, we have that back payment of financial institutions tax that came in, and it's coded under basic formula, skewing that information ever so slightly, $3,893,105. Our early childhood special ed revenue came in under budget by $142,110. Educational screening and program entitlement, that's parents as teachers, so we received additional revenue there than was anticipated by $424,035. And then lastly, our career education came in stronger at $289,990. For federal revenue, Medicaid was higher at $332,658. ESSER 3, so actually there are several ESSER and CARES funds codes listed there, and so those were different than what was originally projected within the revised budget. Our also ARP IDA came in slightly under, and then our regular IDA entitlement, which is our special education revenue, it came in $287,978 under what we anticipated. I referenced previously about our nutrition services program, so we had stronger participation, and likely our revenue budget was understated than where it should have been for FY23. And part of that is due to all the changes based on the waivers, based on special funding formulas that were implemented relative to the pandemic. So stronger by $1.819 million for lunch and $253,000 for breakfast. Child Care Development Fund grant, that revenue was received $1,469,432. Again, we will be conducting deep dives on all of these categories and bring you additional information in the coming months to help you and the department better understand where the gap was. For federal, we have one line to show you transportation received from other LEAs, and that is, I'm sorry, not federal, that is, it's truly other districts, other district revenue, $262,377. So now we'll pivot to the expenditure side, and the comprehensive gap on revised budget versus how much we received was $5,157,073. Now what that means is we did not spend every dollar budgeted in the fiscal year that just closed by $5,157,073. Salary, we had excess budget of $3,162,281. Benefits, $381,785. Purchase services, $226,728. Supplies, $1,284,479. Equipment, $31,008, and then debt service operating $70,000 to make up that total. So to provide you with context, some of those numbers sound large, but when you look at the large budget that we manage, these percentages tell the story for you. So salaries, while it was $3.162 million higher, that's 2.31% of actual salary expenditures. For benefits, the excess represented less than 1%, 0.76%. Purchase services was slightly over 1% higher than budgeted, and that resulted in the $226,728. And then lastly, supplies, nearly a 10% gap on supplies. And there are some significant categories within that area. So 1.284 million left on the table for supplies. This further breaks down for you all of the salary codes. I won't read each one of those. I'll highlight for you that for regular salaries, our budget was stronger. A lot of that is relative to unfilled positions. You can see also that our substitute costs for both certificated and classified staffs, we spent more than what we had budgeted for those particular object codes. And then we also have an opportunity to take a look at how do we budget in Francis Howell for our unused leave and severance payout. So those both came in exceeding the budget that had been allocated for them. Now, Missouri statute requires on all expenditures that we cover the expense by fund. That's the extent of the requirement. So there's no problem that we have a little give and take within these object codes, and that provides us that flexibility that we need as we ensure that we are appropriately budgeting. But we would still desire that we get closer on these budgets moving forward. Under the benefits category, you can see that retirement for non-teacher came in with extra budget left, and that is $446,781. Employee insurance exceeded budget by nearly $200,000. And then worker compensation, we had excess budget of $148,215. For purchase services, again, there are a variety of categories here. I'll highlight for you the larger ones. Purchase services under the instructional services category, we did not spend $606,212. We did spend additional over budget under contracted pupil transportation, $663,688. And we've had conversations in the past about the McKinney-Vento Act and homeless transportation, and I would expect that that is what we'll find those would be applicable to. We also had other purchase services. We exceeded budget by $771,000. For supplies, we had a significant amount in the general supply code, so $1,353,710. I didn't mention before, but the percentage of total is listed in each of these categories so that you can see we definitely had some excessive budget left in the supply category. On the other hand, gasoline and diesel, we expended more than we had allocated by $224,092. And normally I would say we will need to increase the budget in that category, but we know that we have the new information to gather this year as routes are deployed and expenditures change for that. So upcoming financial impacts, just that reminder that we will provide you with the tax rate hearing and the levy calculation in September. We have preliminary information from the county, and we're vetting that to ensure that we provide you with an accurate calculation. As a reminder, we do that using the State Auditor Office calculation process and their interactive website to assist us through that process. Also, September represents the first month during which all employees in the district are paid based on the new salary schedules, based on new hires or people who've retired. So all of that data comes to play during the September payroll. So after that, we immediately start assessing how will the current year budget for salary and benefits perform relative to what we can anticipate based on annual calculations. The future impact of Senate Bill 190 on property tax credits is unknown for us, so that would be something we would continue to watch. And then we have been advised by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that there could be changes coming relative to that transportation formula that we've received last year, and we have anticipation of fully receiving this year. So another thing for us to watch. Lastly, the Missouri State Board of Education met on August 15th, and one of the agenda items for them was the state adequacy target. It will be recalculated. It gets recalculated every 2 years. The past 2 times, it has not changed. It's remained steady at $6,375 per average daily attendee, which means no new money from the state on basic formula calculation. So it's been that way for 5 years, but because of the change in MSIP 6 and the group of districts that will be accumulating those average costs, we are anticipating that there will be an increase, and the discussion is that it will go up. So that could be some great news for us. We'll find out more in the coming month, but keep in mind that we have a $2.5 million reduction that we refer to as a funding cliff when the pandemic provision on the basic formula calculation falls off. So that statute that's providing that protection for us, where we're able to reach back and grab our FY20 attendance data for our students, we will no longer have that ability, and that's a statewide implication. We are not alone in the impact. It just depends on what changed within each district in terms of the total that would happen. So moving forward, we will be digging more deeply. As I mentioned, we'll take a look at where were these budget gaps, where did they occur. We will provide you that budget amendment that we will learn through this process. And then using the updated FY24 budget amendment, we will provide you then that multi-year projection data that helps us better understand what is sustainable for Francis Howell. And monitoring regularly and bringing you the adjustments as we know them. So that is it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment, and I just want to applaud all of your hard work and your dedication to transparency. What you just presented is, I mean, it's an incredible amount of data, obviously, and I just want to congratulate you on being able to make sense of all of it. I hope we all understood what you were saying, but it's just phenomenal. So thank you.
I'll say, Mr. Myers, he's the wizard behind the curtain. I think
it takes a village.
Yes, it does. It does. So,
especially in accounting.
And we're a team, and we'll all be collaboratively talking about this. All the leaders of the various departments, and working toward having good information for you.
I do have a question. You mentioned that the salaries would start in September and you would start assessing in October. Is there other revenue that comes in later in October that may affect everything so that you would not know or be able to project out until maybe November? Does that make sense?
From a revenue perspective, we should really be able to get a good handle on that in the next few weeks.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that we'll have even new data for you in September. The salary and benefit piece, which typically runs 75 to 80% of your operating budget, that will be following the September payroll. So that would be in October.
Okay.
But also in the meantime, all those purchase services and supply codes, we should be able to take a look at what that information tells us for an adjustment perspective. So we'll have it all except for salary and benefits will trail behind.
Okay. Thank you.
I just have a quick question, Carol. Are all the ESSER funds and any kind of funds like that all will be done after this year?
That would be correct. I don't have anything on my radar that would be allowed to go beyond that.
Okay.
Part of the review process.
Thank you.
I have one question. I know that you said that you're going to, when you have the data from what the full, it's going to be paid for our staff and everything in the month of September. In the past, we've always had to, we talked about maybe having to gap spend where we didn't have enough in our budget to pay our employees. Do you see that as an option? Do you see that as coming down this year? Or do you see as of right now that we should be okay to make, because we know our revenues don't come in until January after the property tax. Do we see that as being an issue?
We don't anticipate needing to have a tax anticipation note, is what you're referring to.
That's what it is.
And when districts are highly dependent on local revenue, you do sometimes need to borrow funds temporarily till you get your tax revenue. And no, the answer to your question is we do not expect to need to do that this year,
Okay,
which
great.
is refreshing.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe just, do you have any questions?
No, I would like to say that I'm so glad that we're doing these monthly financial reports. I think this is huge. We want to talk about transparency. This is huge to help us keep the taxpayers informed as to how we're handling the money here, how good of a job you guys are doing with the money. So I appreciate these monthly reports.
So I just have one quick question, hopefully. I know you have a lot of experience in other districts. How much kind of variance would you normally expect, or have you seen in the past going through budgets?
It can vary, most definitely, and it really boils down to having attention month over month of what you see occurring, okay? I will say that for me, in the past, I considered it a huge celebration if my salary and benefits were within, let's say, 0.5 to 0.75%. If I had that excess budget, limited at that, we're, in excess of 2% currently, but that's really the goal, and I wouldn't say that we've looked at it from an overall budget perspective, but it really boils down to me also for having that fund balance that carries us to the point where we don't need to borrow money to pay our people. And that means an increased fund balance at the prior year end. So, did I answer your question?
Yep,
Kind of? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Board, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Board, like a motion to approve the purchases over $7,500 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Stiglich. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Board, like a motion to approve the purchase over $7,500. Number 8, CSTAG as presented.
So moved.
Stiglich, Ponder. Discussion board.
Yeah, thank you for pulling this, Adam. I guess basically what I want to say is I have a strategic and possibly an ideological disagreement with this expense. First, the training that this addresses is only for internal threats by identifying and categorizing those threats, and nothing about external threats, which, there's both. According to the website, there's 2 different types of threats. One's transient and one's substantive. Transient could be just joking around and usually ends up with an apology. Substantive is a real threat about raping or killing someone, and the way you ascertain it, and that's the way you ascertain it, if it's a substantive threat, is filling out a form, which they provide for free on their website. And then you enlist some action by maybe law enforcement. So my question is, if a child says, hey, I'm going to kill you, and then they apologize, what kind of threat is that? Is that substantive, or is that just transient? I think we need to call attention to the threats that I believe first, I think if we call attention to the threats that I believe most teachers are going to see during their tenure, then I trust our teachers to know the difference between transient and substantive, just by nature. I do believe that our teachers are that good, and that they don't need a form to fill out. Second, shouldn't we be getting our law enforcement officers into the loop for substantive threats before we fill out a form? Instead of a group of psychiatrists and psychologists, don't our law enforcement officers offer to do this for no charge? Shouldn't we be partnering with them as opposed to an outside agency such as this? This is a train the trainer program, and while in most situations that's a great way to educate, I asked how trainers would be picked. I'm not sure I got a qualified answer. It just said they would be picked from a bigger group that was, I guess, participating or looking at it for bids in 2022. The proposal mentions partnering with St. Louis Public Schools. I'm confused as to why we don't, partner with somebody out here, Wentzville, like St. Louis, or Wentzville, Fort Zumo. I guess what I'm trying to say is, for those that know me, kids' security is of utmost importance to me. As you know, I've probably garnered each one of you individually at some time and said, let's do something about, making sure these kids are safe. I'm not sure this fills the bill, in my estimation, but I'd like to hear anybody else's comments.
President Bertrand, if I can share a little bit of information. Thank you, Treasurer Pushkar. You bring, those are some good points and good questions. I think we have an opportunity to better explain a little bit about what this model actually is. And so, yes, there are internal and external threats. And when we think about school and district safety, we often focus on those external threats. How are we keeping people out of our buildings? How are we responding when there's a crisis or something takes place in the building? This model specifically is focused on internal threats when we think about students or potentially staff who might make threats or exhibit behaviors that we would want to be responsive to. So really this is a model. It's not a program we're buying. The training is actually working with our internal teams within the district to train people to do it. So when we think about the different types of threats, regardless of the type of threat it isn't just a form. It is a team that would come together within the building. And that team includes building administrators. We have district administrators who are involved. It includes a counselor or emotional support counselor, and it includes the SRO in each building. So law enforcement is involved from the beginning. That team comes together, and what the model is that then they can evaluate the threat that was made. So they look to determine, was the threat credible? What is the context within which it was made? Do we believe the student has access to a weapon or they might do it? That team can make that decision. The SRO is part of it. So in a critical situation, the student could be taken into custody or the police are involved to do that from the beginning to really determine, is it credible and we need to take action? And so then when we follow up with the after steps, it is a situation where there may be discipline based on the threat that took place. It may be encouraging or asking the family to pursue additional medical or mental health supports for the student. There could be an opportunity for apologizing or repairing the relationship during it. But then it also allows us to track some of these behaviors and information over time, so that if a student were to make a threat as a junior in high school, we could go back and see this also happened as a freshman in 8th grade, so there's a pattern of such behavior. So when we talk about the training, back in September of last school year, the board approved this, and we did an initial training of staff within the district, because again, to have that team of 5 or 6 in each building trained will take some time. After the first training, our buildings really liked it and wanted more of their staff trained. So back in July of this year, the board approved doing 2 more trainings in-house this year. That cost will get expensive over the next several years as we train new people to keep doing the training. So the idea here is now to take a group of leaders who have experienced the training that could go get trained so they can come back and on an ongoing basis provide additional training within the district. The piece with St. Louis Public Schools is only that they also are working with this company, and so we can invite them to our training or go to theirs to help defray the cost. So when we did the initial training last year, they purchased spots at our training, and it was just a way that we lowered the cost to Francis Howell by them participating with their teams as well. It's something that we'd be happy to continue to provide updates around it. And again, we recognize this is only one piece of overall district safety and security, but it's an important piece we realize, because oftentimes students begin acting differently or acting out, or we see behaviors that are concerning. And absolutely you're right, our teachers are the first ones to see that. They're tuned into that right when a kid comes into the room, so they can then contact the appropriate people in the building to go through the process of assessing the student in the situation.
Ken, maybe if I can paraphrase and make sure. So we kind of have this, we've already started this process. It's kind of a goal here, maybe to standardize it across the district so that we're all doing things the same way. So we have kind of a baseline and a foundation that we can continue to get better at. And if we're going to continue to utilize this, we want to bring that training in-house so that we are spending so much money.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Additional questions, board?
Who will look, or what sort of process are you going to have in place to verify that the train-the-trainer process is working, that we're staying up to date with the best of the best? How will we do that?
Yeah, I don't know, Dr. Brook, you want to speak specifically?
Yeah, so we'll close to my mouth there. The trainers will be selected from the all of our principals, our counselors, our SROs, our educational support counselors. That's the group going through the initial training that you've approved. The trainers will be the 8 folks that are selected from that group that's gone through initial training. And so once we've identified those 8 folks, they'll get the additional training that'll allow them to then become the trainers that provide that initial training. So to Ms. Pushkar's point, we haven't identified those 8 folks yet, so I can't give you the names of the 8 folks that we'll select, but it'll be from that group. So they'll likely be an SRO. It'll likely be our district mental health coordinator. It'll likely be an educational support counselor. It will be one of the counselors. So it'll be 8 of those folks. They'll have to maintain certification. We don't know that you've approved it yet, so I don't have an ongoing plan for year to year what that will look like. We've partnered with St. Louis Public to help offset the cost. We did reach out to St. Charles County districts. They either already have a program, they're not there yet to have a threat assessment model in place. They didn't have funds to do it. Timing wasn't right. St. Louis Public was the one that was willing to partner with us. So it wasn't that we didn't try to, it's that we weren't able to.
Okay, so the 8 trainers, will then be, obviously, get the initial training, and then I'm assuming there will be
So-
annual, biannual training then to help update them as to, hey.
I'll be honest, most organizations have a criteria to maintain your certification to be a trainer. Some companies, it's an annual training you have to go to. Some, it's every 3 years you have to recertify. I don't know off the top of my head, I can get you that information. I don't know what their criteria is. Our goal is every year we hire new principals, new counselors, we have new SROs that come in, we have new educational support counselors, and it's going to be more cost effective in the long run for us to have internal trainers, so that if we hire a new educational support counselor mid-year, if we hire the police department switches out an SRO mid-year, we're able to provide that training throughout the school year because we have internal trainers that can provide it throughout the year. If we have to bring the company in annually to provide the training, it's just not it'll just be a slower process. So our desire is to have 8 people in-house, and we'll just be more nimble to provide ongoing training. I don't have an answer to your question of how often will we have to recertify the trainers. I would imagine there is a frequency to which we'll have to do that. But I would tell you, just from my experience with professional development, their fees, their train the trainer program, this is their cost, like at cost. This is not a profit-making organization. Normally it's significantly more expensive.
While I appreciate, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jenna.
Okay, so Dr. Buckman, I heard you say that when you pick these trainers, the 8 trainers, that one of them will be including, and to Director Pushkar's point, she had mentioned that SROs, making sure our police are involved. We would make sure that an SRO was part of this training team or one of our police officers.
I don't want to commit to that because I don't know that we've decided who the trainers will be yet, but they would be part of the group that the trainers would be selected from. I would imagine that would be part of the consideration. Part of what we have to look for is, what does their schedule look like? If we're pulling an SRO to provide training throughout the year, then that's leaving a building without an SRO every time that we're pulling to provide training. So it could be that we decide, while they might be a great trainer, if we vision offering 6 trainings throughout the year, that's 6 days throughout the year that a building's without an SRO, and logistically, that's probably not a great idea. So it's not that we don't want an SRO as a trainer, it's that doesn't make sense.
But you would still look at that as a possibility?
For sure.
Okay. I just want, because I think Director Pushkar brought up a good point, and I just want to make sure that would be considered.
It could be that we we invite one to be part of the trainer group and they do the summer trainings.
Right.
We haven't decided yet.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry. Are you gonna, no, thank you. Okay, I appreciate both of your comments and your perspective, I truly do. As I mentioned earlier in what I was talking about, I mean, this may be an ideological difference in opinion, and that is if there's a threat being, whether it be a gun or whatever it is, by a kid, shouldn't that be handled or addressed by a model developed by police as opposed to psychiatrists? I guess that's basically what I'm getting at, because law enforcement they do create models and they do training. I'm not saying that, I wasn't asking for who these people were going to be that were going to be hired. I wasn't getting that far down into it, but what I'm trying to, I guess, stand on and to say is that if it's a legal infraction, then my belief is that it should be modeled after something that the police have already developed, and to get them involved at the beginning instead of after, going through whether or not it's a substantive threat or instead of going through all that.
I can give you more details. I don't have all of them in front of me, but I can tell you that this model was developed based on recommendations from the FBI and from the Secret Service, and so it very much is grounded in police research. It's not necessarily grounded in, here's what the counselors think we should do. It really is a partnership. It's what the entire state of Virginia is using.
Right.
So to your point, yes. And I think that is part of the processes that are in there. The desire is really kind of, to President Bertrand's point, we have 23 sites, over 100 administrators and counselors that are responding to these situations, and we want to make sure that we're doing it in a consistent manner, building to building, so that if, Ms. Embry's child says XYZ and my child says XYZ, that as a school system, we're handling it in the same approach, and it's not this administrator handled it this way and this administrator handled it this way, that school safety looks the same from site to site. And this is our way of kind of handling it with a uniform approach so that we can ensure at our level some consistency that's safe for the student, but that's also ensuring some safety for the other students around them. So that's the goal that this model provides.
We also, the team that came together and spent about a year working through this to identify a model or a system we might use. They had 5 different programs and models they looked at, and some of our SROs in the district were a part of the team that also helped select this model. So at least internally, they were a part of the group that helped make this decision and support utilizing this model.
I also wonder in my head too, if this gets approved tonight, if we can maybe in a future meeting, once they've gone through training, have some of the trainers come to the board meeting, maybe present on it. One is kind of practice run, but also to inform us and the public what they're learning and how they're handling those situations. Go ahead there.
And I'd like to look at it from the teacher's point of view. You mentioned that this is a well-liked program. That's why we're trying to expand it and make it a district-wide program. Can you give me some? I want to look at it from the teacher's point of view and understand how they like it, why they like it, and if you think it'll be something that could retain teachers in the future. If you've thought of that side of it.
So our teachers don't use it. It's for counselors, administrators, SROs, educational support counselors. I hope I'm not forgetting a group of folks. And again, it's just that model so that when a student makes a threat, I'm so mad I'm going to kill you, that there's a process to use on how we assess that threat. Was that they used the words transient and substantive, I believe. Was that a legitimate threat? Is there something behind that? And there's a process. To Ms. Pushkar's point, there's a form, but it's not just about filling out the form. The form kind of walks them through a process that they're using. They're considering all points, and it triggers when do I need to move to the next step and involve law enforcement? When do I need to reach out to the it walks them through the process to use. And so there's some comfort in that as an adult, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of threats that as an adult, I might feel a lot of pressure to make the right call. That's a lot of pressure on an adult. And so there's some comfort in that. It's a support that we're putting in place for the adults that are dealing with some big situations.
Yeah, to be clear, I know that the teachers aren't going to use this, but what I'm looking more at is how is this affecting the teachers and their ability for discipline within the schools, and is that something that you can look forward to and say, well, I think that the way that this is working is going to attract other teachers and retain other teachers in the future?
I think most often when we hear from teachers about discipline and behaviors is that you'll hear there's a lack of consistency. That, if I send them to this administrator, they come right back. Or if I send them here, they ignore it or they do it. Or if I send them to this person, that it's taken seriously and they're sent right home. I would say, speaking for the teachers, that I think how they would interpret this is that it provides that consistency and that clarity. So they know that if a student makes a threat, it's not on them to determine if it's serious or not. It doesn't matter which administrator they might see, but they're going to be sent to the office. The team will come together and follow this process consistently, which will look at these different factors and making a determination of how to move forward with it. And I would like to believe that the teachers would feel good about that, and that it is provide some consistency to the process.
Any other discussion, board?
I'll just throw it out there because I would imagine many people watching might now have a lot of questions about the threat assessment model. Dr. Vanderpool did do a best practice session at the April board meeting about it. So for those at home that are watching and are now wondering what in the world a threat assessment model is, there is a great best practice session at the April board meeting. If it has all the details about it, how we landed on it, what it looks like. There's a whole slideshow about it. So there you go.
Thank you for that clarification, Connie.
All right, board, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. All right, up next we have Ms. Jen Joels presenting on our stakeholder survey.
Thank you, Mr. Bertrand. And if you did not get your fill of numbers from Ms. Embry's presentation, you're in luck, because we are going to dive into some more data and percentages and all kinds of things tonight. But I'm going to try to go through this pretty quickly and keep it pretty high level. I'll get us started, and then I'm going to kick it over to Dr. Rumpus to talk about next steps and kind of how we're going to use the information. So first, just a little bit of context. You may recall that right before the end of last school year, we distributed a survey to get feedback from the community. The survey was sent via email to all parents and guardians, our staff, and all community members who are subscribed to our email list, and then we also posted it to the district website. And so again, I'll give you a high-level overview of the results. To turn this on, Jane.
The middle button.
Too many arrows. Okay. So as you'll see here, the survey was open for just over 2 weeks, from May 11th through May 26th. And the purpose of the survey is really to help us understand what the district is doing well, in addition to the opportunities for improvement. We wanted to know how to best engage our community as we move forward and use that information to inform the district's next strategic plan. And I also want to say up front that we recognize this is not a scientific or normed survey. The pool of people who received it is limited. But what is important from the survey is the general themes, as they serve as an indicator of the overall culture and climate of the district at this particular moment, or at least as of May 11th. So you'll see here we had more than 1,300 participants start the survey, and about 1,246 actually answered all questions. There was an ability to skip some things, so we had a couple people skip here. We had a good mix of stakeholders. We had parents, staff, and residents in all areas of the district were represented in responses. And if you're a math person, you're saying, well, then that doesn't add up to 100%. And those of you who took the survey probably remember that you could select all relationships that apply. So like I'm a parent in the district, I'm a staff member, and I also live in the district, so I would be counted in all of those buckets, if that makes sense. So they're not mutually exclusive categories. So we'll first look at our quantitative questions, or our rating questions, and then we'll move into some of the qualitative themes that we found in the data. On this slide and then the next few, they're going to be formatted the same way, and there's a lot going on, so let me talk you through it. You'll see 3 columns of data here. This year's scores are on the far right, and they are compared with scores from the last 2 years of data we have. So there's one pre-COVID year in 2019, and then last year's data, 2022. You'll see the number of responses we received this year and last year are pretty similar, between 1,300 and 1,500. But the 2019 survey, for reasons I am not sure, this was before my time, only had 327. So just keep that in mind, just an interesting anomaly there. On this first set of questions, we asked respondents to rate the district on a number of topics, similar to a school report card. So we asked them to grade us on a scale of grades, basically A being the best and F being failing. So you'll see that on these 3 topics, involve citizens in decision-making, reporting our plans and progress, and responsiveness, the percentage of respondents rating the district's efforts in these areas as A or B increased, suggesting the district made improvements in these areas over the prior year. We then took those same 3 questions and we looked at the percentage of respondents who rated the district's efforts as a D or F in the same areas. So given the increase we saw in A's and B's, we would expect the failing grades to go down, and you see here that they did. So the takeaway for us on this is that the district has a better report card, in essence, in these areas, more A's and B's and fewer D's and F's than the year prior. So that suggests we're moving in the right direction, at least on these issues right here, these topics. The next series of questions asked respondents to rank each statement from strongly agree to agree. So you'll see the statements listed there. This slide overall is really about engagement. It shows the percentage of respondents who indicated they agree or strongly agree with the statements listed here. There were very little change from last year. Many categories didn't change at all in terms of percentage. Really the 2 that did, slightly fewer people say they watch or attend board meetings, and slightly more people indicate they read news from the district on a regular basis. One thing you'll see here is that less than 40% of respondents are say that they're familiar with the district's budget, even though the vast majority pay taxes here. And so that tells us we have an opportunity to better educate stakeholders around budget and financial issues, which Ms. Embry has already started doing. And finally, it should be noted that this data represents respondents, right, and not necessarily the entire community. And so we know because of our survey pool, the respondents, by and large, are people who are at least somewhat engaged. You had to care enough to open your email, take the time to fill out the survey. And so we understand there are other stakeholders who either didn't have the opportunity, they're not on the email list, didn't have an opportunity, or clicked delete or sent us to spam.
Ms. Jones, can you share, though, that we did try and seek opportunities? We sent the survey out to some of our chamber groups, our community groups that we're connected to, and did ask people to try and disseminate it at a larger level. We understand we won't reach everyone, but we are continuing to try and find opportunities to engage the community larger than just our staff and our parents, recognizing that our taxpayer base is much larger.
Thank you. All right, and then moving on to our next set of questions, still in that same format. Again, the district made improvements in each of these areas over last year. So you'll see that a strong majority of stakeholders agree that Francis Howell offers a high-quality education and prepares students for the future. But less than half agree that the district spends taxpayer funds effectively and efficiently. And though there were improvements in this area, more than half of respondents do not trust district leadership to make good decisions. And one thing that became apparent when we looked at the open-ended responses is that some of the survey questions could benefit from additional clarity. So if we do this survey again, we want to look at that. So for example, some respondents interpreted district leadership as the superintendent being new in his role. Some interpreted it as the entire administrative team, and some interpreted it as the Board of Education. And so I think if we do this again, it might give us better opportunities to understand people's perspectives if we clarify what we mean by district leadership. And then there were 2 new questions we added to the survey this year versus last year. And so you'll see here this first one. These were really designed to measure the impact of some of the concerted efforts that Dr. Rumpus and the leadership team have made to build relationships, increase transparency, and improve trust. So here you'll see that 63% of respondents agree or strongly agree that the district has made efforts to be more transparent in the last 12 months, with only 12% disagreeing with that statement. And then this is the second new question we added. In terms of overall satisfaction, you'll see a relatively even split among respondents who feel more satisfied with the way things are going this year, those who feel less satisfied, and those who are neutral. So if you stack your agree and strongly agree together and you consider that agree and strongly disagree and disagree together, you'll see that it's really about the same. But what's interesting here is a large number of folks kind of stayed neutral, so they feel the same that they did a year ago. All right, and then there was another question on the survey that asked respondents to rate their overall trust in the district and its leadership from a scale of 1 to 10, so 1 being low, 10 being high. And so for the purpose of this slide, those who rated their level of trust as a 7 or better were categorized as high trust, and those who rated it as a 4 or lower were put in a category of low trust. And so you'll see the comparison to the year prior down in yellow, at the bottom of the slide in yellow. So you'll see there were some improvements over last year, but there's still significant opportunity here for the district to continue building trust with stakeholders. For those who rated their level of trust as low, that was that 4 or below, they got a follow-up question. So if for someone you took the survey and you rated it as a high, a 4 or 7 or higher, you didn't see this question. But those who rated it low, we said, what can the district do to strengthen your trust and support? And it was an open-ended question. And these were some of the things that we read in the comments. So one theme really being around communication. So this desire for the district to continue to be open, honest, and transparent about the curriculum and budget, involve stakeholders in decision-making where appropriate, listening to all voices, more two-way communication, not just pushing information out, but considering input from stakeholders. And there were also a number of references to keeping politics out of education. Others said the district needs to demonstrate fiscal responsibility in order to earn their trust. So that things like spending dollars wisely, being transparent about how funds are being spent, and showing evidence of long-term planning. And finally, there's strong support for our teachers and staff, and some respondents indicating it would take improved working conditions and competitive pay to earn their trust and support. So you'll see some of these same themes that will come up again as we move through the open-ended questions. The 2 open-ended questions were, what is the district doing well, and what can the district improve? And so I'll go over some of the top themes in those areas. So we'll start with what we're doing well. Communication and transparency was a strong theme throughout the responses, with many stakeholders acknowledging the positive steps taken over the last year. Things like the Citizens Roundtable, the Prop S audit were mentioned as examples of the district being transparent and inviting the community in problem solving. The next theme was quality of education. Comments expressed satisfaction with the education provided by the district, mentioning academic rigor, our STEM programs, a wide variety of elective and specialized courses, including AP classes. Next, Francis Howell teachers received high praise for their dedication, hard work, and caring attitudes. The efforts of teachers to engage, challenge, and support students are highlighted. Some mention the need to retain good teachers, and you'll see this come up again when we discuss opportunities. In terms of sports and extracurriculars, respondents liked the variety of opportunities that students have at Francis Howell with regard to sports, band, music programs, and other clubs and organizations. There was also a theme of student safety and well-being. Comments here touched on the feeling of safety in the school environment and the measures taken to ensure the physical and emotional security, including mental health support. There were a lot of comments around our SROs, especially being able to protect many of our elementary schools. Last year being the first time for that really came through as a positive for what the district was doing. And then with regard to leadership and administration, the text reflects opinions about the superintendent, board members and district administrators, citing their commitment to improvement, rebuilding trust, and making strategic decisions to steer the district in the right direction on a number of fronts. And the final theme that emerged was really around community engagement and responsiveness. So the text reflects the sense of community involvement with many stakeholders, again, feeling that their opinions are being heard, and the district is working to build a close community and making efforts to repair trust and build relationships. So the survey also highlighted then a number of opportunities for the district. And what's interesting when you look at the data is some of these themes are really familiar. They look familiar because they're kind of opposite sides of what we saw in terms of our celebrations or things we're doing well. So teacher support and retention. There's a real concern that we are losing and will continue to lose quality teachers to other districts if we can't find a way to pay them more. That was really the strongest theme that came through the opportunities. A recurring theme was really, again, around providing those competitive wages and benefits to attract and retain the very best teachers and staff. Fiscal responsibility was another strong theme, with stakeholders wanting more evidence that the district is spending money wisely. There's a call for more responsible handling of funds, with some advocating for a focus on the basics and cautioning against unnecessary spending on technology and curriculum that may not be essential to student success. Student behavior was another theme. Concerns about bullying, vaping, student discipline, and safety within schools and buses were repeatedly mentioned. Stakeholders are calling for stronger measures to keep children safe, hold students accountable for their actions, and ensure a respectful learning environment. Stakeholders also shared concerns about student stress and anxiety and would like to see proactive measures to address mental health as a way to help and protect students. The next theme was around curriculum. There were different perspectives that emerged on this particular theme. Some wanted to see more diversity in the curriculum, while others want the district to get back to basics and focus on reading, writing, math, and science. Some stakeholders want increased academic rigor and standards, while others want a well-rounded education that includes all viewpoints, and some want both of those things. Topics related to culture and climate include calls for tolerance and inclusivity, more diversity among staff, respect for traditional family values, concerns about gender issues in schools, and contradictory opinions about how DEI should be approached. There are also concerns about the influence of politics in schools, the pushing of particular agendas, and the need to keep politics out of educational decisions and curriculum. Next is family and community engagement. We've seen this theme a couple of times. Comments under this theme really relate to the need for better communication, more communication between schools and parents specifically, including enforcement of rules, collaboration and decision-making, and opportunities for parental involvement. And then at the district level, there's a desire for more communication, including community meetings similar to the Roundtable series, and factual information, not just PR. This will allow the district to continue building trust with stakeholders, which many stakeholders in the comments said they see that as an essential step toward gaining support for any future ballot initiatives. And finally, facilities and infrastructure are an area of opportunity for the district. Concerns about the state of physical infrastructure, including our school buildings, parking lots, and drains are mentioned, with stakeholders calling for better maintenance and responsible planning. There's an awareness that the district's 23 school facilities are not equitable, with some schools in better shape than others. Comments also highlighted the need for better technology access for all students. However, opinions on technology usage within the classroom specifically seem divided, some advocating for increased tech availability and integration, and others expressing concern that over-reliance on technology and a need to return to more traditional teaching methods. So you see lots of, if you noticed again, the sort of the celebrations and the opportunities oftentimes were opposite sides of the same particular topic. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Rumpus, and I'll remain here for questions.
Thank you. So board, looking at this information, we really need to think about how we as a leadership team use this to continue to move forward and to better engage our stakeholders. If we go back to the purpose of the survey when we pushed it out a little over a year ago, it was really meant to give me and the leadership team some direction about where we needed to go when we think about how we spend our time, our limited resources, and what our community really needs when we talk about how we better engage them. We ultimately want to continue providing one of the best educational experiences in the state of Missouri, and that requires us being able to recruit and retain the best staff. And that ultimately requires strong salaries and benefits combined with a culture and climate where staff really want to work. It also requires, in order for us to do that, us being able to fund the programs and resources necessary to provide a high-quality education for over 16,000 students within this community. And that needs to be balanced by demonstrating fiscal stability that our community both deserves and expects. We often talk about these things as either or, that they're polar topics, as were several of the items that Ms. Joels listed. And I think as we move forward, we really need to think about the opportunity to talk about both and. These don't need to be we either do this or we do this, but how do we find the combination of those things that will best serve our entire community? We plan to do that through opportunities to educate and share our financial information with all stakeholders in a variety of different formats to increase that transparency. One of those first steps was tonight having Ms. Embry come up and share the information, which we plan to do on a monthly basis, looking at some of our roundtables and other events we hold and how those could be used to better inform our community about our finances, to answer the questions they have, and to really help them understand it. School finance, in some ways, it can be complicated. It doesn't have to be. And the more we're talking about it and sharing the information, the better that understanding becomes for everyone. We're excited to work with the board, as President Bertrand shared last month, and work through a new strategic plan and updating it this fall. That process will allow us the opportunity to revisit our priorities and really focus on what's most important to this community and the goals the board has for the district and for administration as we move through the next several years. We received a lot of positive feedback about the citizen roundtables that we did last year. So we do plan to hold 3 of those again this year, and we'll be announcing topics and dates for those in the near future. Again, when we think about engaging the community, it's about providing a variety of different formats. There are some people that love coming to the board meetings or tuning in online, and they get their information this way. There are some of our parents and constituents who only can attend events at the building. The stakeholder roundtables were another opportunity for a different group of citizens to come together and share information in a format that really allowed people to just hear different ideas and not let any one person control the conversation overall. So we look forward to continuing those. We're doing a comprehensive review of steps for the district after the audit results are released. We understand that the audit was initially requested and brought because of Prop S, but the reality is when the state auditor comes in, they're auditing everything we do, all of our processes and systems within the district. And so we know that when auditors come in, they're going to have findings of things that we can do better. So once that report comes out, we will have an opportunity as an administrative team and as a board to review that and talk about systems that we either need to put in place or to improve to continue effective and efficient operation within the district. And last, we really continue to be focused on continuous improvement. As a new team last year, we knew that there was a lot of trust that had been broken in the community, that communication was at a low, as was shown the first time we did the survey. And so we put some intentional pieces in place last year and some action steps to try and improve that. We're thrilled and we celebrate some of the small or incremental increases you saw in some of those questions last year, but we also recognize that building trust and maintaining that trust is ongoing. That's not something that will ever stop for us as a leadership team or in our work with you as a Board of Education. And we recognize that our stakeholders, whether we're talking about internal staff or teachers, parents, or just patrons and citizens of the community, that everybody wants that level of understanding and communication from the district so they know what's going on, so that ultimately we have the support of our community. So I and our team remain committed to that work. We continue to welcome feedback from stakeholders, both the positive things as well as the opportunities that we have to do things better. And we want to incorporate that into the work, understand that ultimately that's what will allow us to best serve our students and this community. So we would be happy, Board, if you have any specific questions about the survey or any of the information you heard, to try and answer those questions.
Questions, Board? All right, thank you, Ms. Jones. Next, we have Superintendent comments.
Thank you, President Bertrand. First, I would also like to take a moment and extend my gratitude to each and every one of the staff members of the district. The dedication, hard work, and commitment that's put into place to prepare to reopen a school district of this size is pretty incredible, whether that's working in our buildings and our grounds, getting our buses ready, or preparing classrooms for Monday, and that work has not gone unnoticed. So I want to thank everybody as they come back. And I know they were mentioned earlier, but also specifically thanking everybody who's working hard. But custodial and maintenance teams have really been working overtime the last several weeks to make sure our schools and grounds are ready. The reality is we offer a significant amount of summer programming, so for many people there is no break. And to be able to get buildings ready to reopen even in the midst of summer camps, sports camps, vacation station, it is a pretty significant feat. We also know that, and we're well aware, there have been HVAC issues throughout the district. Most specifically very recently. That actually has led to some schedule changes this week and having to be flexible with schedules. I appreciate the teachers and the staff who have been flexible around that. We understand that people have been working this week and the last few days in conditions that are not ideal. Everyone is working as hard as they can to address that so that we're prepared for our students on Monday. Last week, a week ago Monday, we welcomed just over 150 new educators to this district. They were squeezed into this space right here. Which was wonderful. It was a high energy group. And then this week we welcome back our returning teachers and staff. So this has been a week of preparation, meetings, professional development, team building, happening both at the district level and at the school level to prepare for the start of the year. It's an exciting energy to work in a profession where you have that, we're all sad to say goodbye for the summer, but you come back anticipating a new year and with all the excitement that brings, so that we're ready to welcome back every student on the first day of school, which we need to continue to remind everyone is next Monday, August 21st. Today we held Transition Day, which is a day where we invite all of our 6th graders and 9th graders to come. They get to spend part of the day in their buildings, meeting their staff. They got to ride buses to school. They receive an overview of the classes, and really to help them feel comfortable in their new middle school or high school as part of that process. It was also the first time then that some of our middle school and high school students had the opportunity to ride the bus together this morning, which was one of the changes that we implemented this year with our transportation updates that we spoke about a lot last year. I know that over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of concern related around transportation and the changes. We really did our best last year to communicate as those decisions were being made. We got input, we shared that they were coming, we shared at the end of the year, we shared over the summer, but the reality is, which we anticipated, it wasn't until bus schedules were released last week and parents opened those up and looked at them that they really realized what those changes were and how they would impact them personally. Our transportation department has received hundreds of calls and emails, which is the process when parents either have a concern or want something changed. I want to thank our parents for being patient. There's a team of people who are working through those, and it does take some time to get through them, but they are really doing their best to respond to each of those parents and try to address each person's situation, understanding that they're each unique and need some special attention. I also want to use this opportunity to remind parents that as those changes are made, it causes some changes in the system. So bus routes have continued to change, some times have continued to change. We do try to communicate those out when they happen, but I want to make sure everyone's aware that that will continue to happen, even after the school year starts, as we figure out who's riding, who's not riding, and we make corrections, especially now that we've combined more routes. Those will continue to change. And so I thank everyone for being patient. Again, we'll try to communicate as those changes happen, but please anticipate that there still will be additional changes as we start the school year and work through that. One other group I would like to thank is our Central County Fire and Rescue, who is always a huge supporter of the Francis Howell School District. Last week, they donated a whole set of backpacks and school supplies to the district. We have those, and ultimately they'll be gifted to students as needs arise. And so we thank them for their ongoing partnership and recognize that that's a great help for our students. One last thing, I want to recognize that we also still have some staff openings, specifically in our paraprofessional positions, our custodial positions, and for substitute teachers. So if you know people who are looking for full-time and part-time work, we do have openings, and please encourage them to reach out to Francis Howell and to our Human Resources Department. So as we gear up to welcome our students back on Monday, which is really why we're all here and what the work is about, again, I want to reiterate to our staff that the hard work they do is not unnoticed. We know that they've been preparing not only their physical spaces, their classrooms, their buses, our buildings, but they're also setting the foundation for a successful and enriching academic school year for all of our students. Their dedication to the work is truly commendable, and we're glad to have them back and to welcome our students on Monday. Thank you.
you, Dr. Rumpus. Next, we have board comments or requests.
I would like to say that I had the opportunity to visit some of the schools this week, some of my buddy schools, and to credit to Dr. Rumpus and his administrative team, and to Anita Keener and all of our teachers. I have never seen, it's been a long time since I saw the kind of enthusiasm I saw this last week. I saw it at the high school, I saw it in the middle school, I saw it at the elementary school. People are excited to be here in Francis Hall, and I think that just says a lot for our administrative team and for our teachers and for our paraprofessionals.
I guess I'll chime in. The few schools that I visited this week and the Early Childhood Center all look great. Lots of buzz and excitement. I think they're ready for the kids to come back next week and hopefully have a great year.
Adam, I'd like to request that we form a citizens panel for school safety. I know of a few parents that might be interested in joining. Just them kind of being in an advisory capacity, letting us know what they hear. They'd be like our boots on the ground. I'd like to involve you and Dr. Rumpus and whoever else, maybe Mark Ponder, to be on this, to help guide this panel and help us get information that we need when we make decisions about the safety of our kids.
Thank you. The comments board? I would just like to say thanks to all our teachers and staff. I've been in a number of schools, going to all the meet the teachers and open houses, and everything does, echoing everybody else, everything does look great, and everybody seems well prepared, and all the kids seem excited and ready for the new school year. So, thank you.
Unlike you guys, I'm going to wait till the schools are full, and then I'm going to pop in.
Board, I'd like a motion to enter closed session to discuss personnel 610.021, legal 610.021, and terrorist incident 610.021.
So moved.
Director Stiglich. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you everybody for coming.